Our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is Ms. Athita Komindr, who joins us today all the way from the Thailand Arbitration Center in Bangkok. Ms. Athita is a graduate of Harvard University, and having been called to the New York bar in 2002, Ms. Athita had opted to return to her home country of Thailand to contribute towards the development of arbitration and alternate dispute resolution, ADR, in Thailand by working with the Thailand Arbitration Center. Ms. Athita's position as the Executive Manager of the Arbitration and Legal Affairs of the Thailand Arbitration Center entails administrating arbitration cases, both domestic and international, spearheading arbitration training programs, researching projects, promoting and raising public awareness of the various modes of ADR, including both arbitration and mediation, as well as fostering cooperation with other neighboring and global ADR institutions. Ms. Athita specializes in dispute settlement and has a strong interest in the resolution of public and private international trade and commercial conflicts. She has extensive professional and academic expertise in cross-border negotiations, as well as bilateral and multilateral dispute resolution. Ms. Athita is also very talented bilingually, and she can speak both Thai and the English language, and has a working knowledge of the French language as well. I do believe Ms. Athita will be giving us an overview of arbitration as a dispute resolution method in Thailand. Please give a very warm welcome to Ms. Athita. Thank you.
Good morning, Tansri Chunku, Dato, Dr. Sindra Raju, ladies and gentlemen. Hello from Bangkok, Sawadee Ka. It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here with you today. My topic is sports ADR in Thailand, New Horizons. If you look closely at the picture that I chose to start my presentation, you can see that it's actually a competition. It's between Thailand and Malaysia, actually, but it's of Chakra, and it's with female athletes, and that is where I think sports is actually heading. Professionalization of sports in all branches, in all local sports, and across all genders, which I think is a new and important development, especially in Southeast Asia. I'm especially encouraged to see so many women in the audience today. And I'm particularly sensitive to this because I'm the only female speaker on this particular panel, so thank you for having me, and it's good to see all of you ladies here. Now, speaking of New Horizons, I would like to speak about THAC, the Thailand Arbitration Center in Bangkok. We too are new. We just moved to our permanent facilities in July 2015, and we are the new face of international arbitration in Thailand. ADR in Thailand, alternative dispute resolution, still remains a novel concept for many sectors, apart from those who are sophisticated with regards to resolution by arbitration, such as the construction industry, which I think is the case in Malaysia as well, or those experienced in international investment. Although I would say Thai corporations might be more on the receiving end of arbitration, of requests to include arbitration clauses in their contracts. So I guess aggressive or active use of arbitration clauses is a new concept in the Thai industry in general, and in sports in particular is also new. So that's why the New Horizons topic is especially timely right now. So while the topic of this particular session focuses on arbitration in sports, I would like to also talk about ADR in sports in general, and that would include mediation, which is another service that THAC also provides. Now, there's a great quote from someone, Rafael Morgan, who wrote this for the KLRCA mediation blog, and he notes that sport is by definition a form of competitive activity. Great athletes and coaches hate to lose, but in successful mediation, everyone can be a winner. So I just wanted to add the dimension of mediation in there, which could be an equally effective method of dispute resolution for certain types of sporting disputes as well, especially since many sporting associations would like to foster long-standing, long-term relationships. I would like to recall that CAS also recognizes mediation as a viable tool for the resolution of sporting disputes, and they include rules on mediation, as does THAC. Now, moving on to the current state of play in Thailand right now with regards to sporting disputes. We are in transition. We're at a crossroads. There is an increased professionalization of sports in Thailand, which means that there is more fruitful ground for disputes. I don't know if fruitful is the right term, but there's more ground for disputes, and hence an increased need for an institutionalized dispute resolution mechanism that would address general sporting issues and also individual sport needs. Now, for the types of disputes that we are seeing more and more in Thailand right now, I think this breakdown is quite common across the board in all countries and not just Thailand. There are individual contractual agreement disputes with players, their associations, their federations. There are intellectual property right disputes, such as image rights, broadcasting rights, domain names, and things like that. In Thailand in particular, this is a new area for us, especially with the expansion of new media such as mobile phones, which provide more access to people to view the broadcast of sporting events. And this is also invigorating. For example, most recently, there was the first live national broadcast of the Thailand League for THAC. So that was the very first one. I think Malaysia actually sent an observer to that. So even local sports that might not have been as popular before are being invigorated by this new media, new technology, new types of contracts, which would lead to more disputes. Sponsorship agreements is another area in which disputes are increasing. And last but not least is definitely the increased regulation, not just at the national level, but at the regional, provincial, and local level. This is just a graphic illustration of what I had spoken previously, that the scope of play, the state of play right now for sporting disputes in Thailand is not just limited to the players. That is our very famous female volleyball team there. They've been quite successful. So sporting disputes aren't just limited to individual players, but also to referees, issues related to venues, next picture, and also definitely issues related to various federations and sporting associations. Now, moving on to how the transition in sports would favor the use of ADR in Thailand. And that would include both arbitration and mediation. We would start with the technical disputes. Sporting disputes are in fact sensitive to the circumstances of the given sport. So considering factual circumstances becomes more relevant than the issues of law raised. So that would be one ground in which disputes would come to the forefront. Expeditious resolution of disputes are needed. For sporting events in particular, you might need a particular resolution during a game, if that's possible, during a season, during a tournament, that is particularly critical. Now, with the unique capabilities of each player, missing games due to an outstanding dispute is costly, especially with the broadcasting concerns that I had just raised. And ADR would provide a mechanism for quicker resolution of disputes. I'm talking in comparative terms here because currently, the regular resolution of disputes for Thai sporting disputes is not ADR, but it would actually be a resort to local courts once the remedies via dispute review boards under particular associations are exhausted. Now, resort to courts, as has been said by previous speakers this morning, is costly and also time-consuming. An event, a resolution of a dispute through litigation could take several months up to several years, which is just too costly for a sporting event. Another advantage of using ADR, either mediation or arbitration now, is confidentiality, and this is something that we always stress to potential clients when they ask when they ask us why we would propose using ADR to resolve a dispute. confidentiality. While players have individual agreements, even in team sports, disclosure of these details can adversely impact the team spirit. That's one example of how the disclosure could affect the outcome of the dispute, or also the long-standing relationship between the parties. Last but not least, conformity of the sporting ethos. The inherent goodwill and the nature of sport is more compatible with ADR, especially, say, mediation, than contentious proceedings. If there is an institutionalized dispute resolution mechanism, that too would also help decrease tension, I think, because it would be the accepted form of dispute resolution, and you could resort to that without having to actually argue over which mechanism would be the most appropriate venue for resolving a particular dispute at hand.